What's really good, ladies and gentlemen? It's the OG Boricua Dandada, aka I Hate StreamYard. I'm here with none other than Rob from MLW Confusion. Muffins Martinez played the sucker role and tried to act like nobody hit him up, and everybody hit him up. So he gets talked about like this. Rob, please jump in so we can talk some MLW. Introduce yourself, talk some MLW Confusion. Plug everything now before I forget how to plug everything.
There we go. As said, I am Rob K. At the Nova of Cass on the Twitter and a lot of the social medias. I'm the host of MLW Confusion, the audio component to this here show. Getting the plugs out first. So yeah, be sure to follow us on Twitter. Our hashtag or Twitter names are already up on the screen. You can also follow Muffins / the Urban Wrestling Network main page at Urban Wrestling and N.W.A. And plus, we'll throw in all the other pertinent like merch links and previous interviews down in the description. So of course, be sure to like, subscribe, tell your friends, neighbors. Word of mouth is always important for things like these. And in the meanwhile, let's get down to MLW. MLW is back, or at least in the form of Fusion. Fusion has made its return after I don't know how many months now. It's been about a month since we've had any new programming from the underground, and now we're back to the flagship show, which is like going to be on like 4 days a week now, and that's going to be great. So there's not a great excuse not to pick it up, especially since it's back on YouTube. So that means it's free and on demand. So I definitely, regardless of how I will feel about any individual episode, you should totally check out MLW Fusion now that it's back. This week they are having episode 166 from, I believe, Tijuana, the start of the Super Series, partnering, I guess it's not, is it officially with AAA at this point, or are they still just kind of popping with one of the indies down below the border?
No, I think this was AAA because it was shown as the isn't like the Super Series coming up, they said as well. And then
yeah,
their women's title was defended, I think, last night too.
Yeah. Well, I knew they were definitely working with folks from AAA, but I didn't quite remember the relationship because it's been so long since the original like press release about it. And
Yeah.
you know, it's sometimes certain things I just cover and I move along, and this was kind of one of them. So yeah, as Bodhi said, we got some AAA action in the main event. The Rihanna's title was defended along with the MLW Featherweight Championship in a fatal 4-way. But that is our main event. Let's not jump the gun too much. So brand new show. They're treating it almost as such. We have a new theme song by Violent Idols, I believe the band's name was. I didn't write that down, but I did like pull up the email when I was doing Confusion, and a new broadcaster in the form of Christian Cole, which I am not as familiar with. But you said you've seen some of his work, so I'll let you kind of jump in on his background.
Well, I know a lot of, see, the thing with having that Urban Wrestling Network podcast Instagram, I see a bunch of indie stuff. Also, with looking at Sam Leterna, I've seen her like some of his stuff. So I've seen a lot of his work through like quick videos through social media. So I knew a little bit about him just through Instagram, Twitter, things like that. Coming into it, I know we kind of talked about this, and I'm going to say it this way because I kind of liked his flow. I liked his delivery. I liked his sound. And before I want to, I don't want to say, this guy this or this guy that. I want to give him a little bit because I think this got to be tough to come into a position like this. Also, his MLW debut isn't even in the States. It's in Mexico with a whole different vibe and a whole different crowd. And, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt because I do like the work he's done. And I think he's going to be really good for MLW. But I think he got to get his feet wet, take his lumps, understand, at times, if you got something better to say, say it before the next guy. You know what I mean? Like, just, I think treading water right now, I think is what he's doing.
Right. And I know when we talked last night about it, like I wasn't high on him. But everything you said makes sense. And like I failed to put in perspective when I was forming my opinion that, again, like regardless of how great you can be, when you're thrown into a new situation, and I'm not sure how familiar he is with some of these folks as well. I mean, I am not the be all end all and everything, and even I am not as 100% familiar with. And I made the joke of like, what's a crazy Frank, So we. If you're thrown in a new situation where you don't know folks, and then in wrestling, of course, commentary is usually in a group, in a team of some sort, or at least a pair, and so sometimes you have to find your footing in that as well. So here's episode number 1. Like, we could make the judgment call that maybe he didn't get his A game in there, but again, like, he does have to find his flow within the big scheme of things, and that is something I definitely didn't take into account when we were talking last night.
Oh no, I wasn't even gonna go that far with this. See, unlike Muffins, I'm not gonna freaking stab you in the back, with the other thing. I will say, and public service announcement: anything anyone says here, I'm gonna co-sign. Right, wrong, indifferent, I'm gonna agree with. I thought it was hilarious. I won't bring it up because I thought it was super funny, and I won't sit there and say he said it, he did it. But it was hilarious. But no, I think this guy, like I said, I like Christian Cole. I think that I want to give him a few tapings and then really sit back and go, okay, like, homie, you had enough time. I want to see who Christian Cole is. I don't want to see the background guy. Just, do what you do. If this is what you're doing, that means you've done it well enough where they've now noticed you and say, all right, well, we believe this guy's an asset to the team. Be that asset to the team. Do what you normally do. Don't switch up because you're in MLW now. They liked you before MLW. That's why they signed you. Don't change. Don't be the guy that they invested in. Now, I know we have Juicy versus what's this guy's name? Something 666.
Damien 666, and
Damien 666.
That's how it was originally advertised, and it turns out it was a triple threat match with a gentleman named Crazy Frank, who I have never heard of. So I had to make Plants vs. Zombies reference in there when I originally did my recording, because the neighbor in there, for those of you not in the know, the neighbor is Crazy Dave, who helps you out and hooks you up with all the new cool plants. But I am at least aware.
What are we talking about, sir?
We're kicking up with like 10-year-old video games at this point. But that being said, like, I'm not familiar with Crazy Frank at all, so I have no basis on this, and I've actually not done any research since Fusion last night to here, so that's going to be bad on me. But I am at least have a modicum of familiarity with Damien, who's carved himself out, a niche. As commentary put over, he's been wrestling for near 40 years. Had a stint in WCW. Then after WCW folded, had continued to build himself a reputation teaming with Halloween, and kind of becoming like the preeminent hardcore luchadores, at least north of the border as well, because I know they also had a stint in, I believe, XPW doing some of the hardcore stuff. So like this is a bit more in his wheelhouse. But yeah, so they had a triple threat hardcore match. Everybody brought plunder to the ring with them in some way, shape, or form. And actually, for me, like, outside of the interference by Los Misosos, I gotta look at my notes on that one. That's me being like really bad. Macizos. There we go.
It sounds really correct.
Macizos. I do have my notes and kind of in front of me. I just had to figure out where we were. I was kind of impressed about the. Overall with the type of weaponry used. Like, I didn't expect to see the panes of glass come out. Like that surprised me. Also watching Damien take a spill off the stage too. I mean, if the dude's been wrestling for 30 years, that means he has to be in his mid 50s. Yep. At best, and like, it wasn't like a huge stage, but like it had to have been at least 5.5 feet tall. And I mean, like, any fall at that age is not great to begin with. And like, yes, he had a table to break that fall, but that was surprising. But barring that, despite my being a fan of the death matches and hardcore wrestling in general, like, I didn't feel this was a great showing overall. And I mean, you can have a different opinion. But my complaints is that it did nothing to really hide anybody's weaknesses, despite the brawling aspect of it. Like, it wasn't a good brawl. All the guys, like, despite Juicy being surprisingly nimble for a man his size, like, none of them bring like a full-on explosivity to their work in general. So it wasn't wild enough to be a good wild brawl, but it also wasn't like a good enough wrestling match just in general to, bring up a work rate aspect of it as well. And again, like, that's not Juicy's wheelhouse. Damian is a lot older than everybody else in that ring, and I have no clue what a Crazy Frank is.
Crazy Frank came out of left field, right? Like, I have no idea who he is. So to me, this is the first time I've ever seen him. Now, I will agree at times, and I think you said it when we were talking, that it felt drawn out. And I completely agree with that. It felt like this went on way too long. Some spots I enjoyed. I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. I see I see where they're going with all the aggressiveness and hardcore stuff. Being put through a car hood, I thought that was really cool. I don't remember the last time I've seen a car hood in a match, so I thought that was pretty cool. The pane glass, I completely agree with. That's something probably we haven't seen since like WWF, probably. Maybe I don't think I ever seen it in Impact. So
actually
was cool,
AEW did do it back when MJF was feuding with Chris Jericho. I think it was MJF. When they brought in Nick Gage for that one shot, they did the panes of glass. But in terms of mainstream wrestling, that's about the only time in quite some time. Like, otherwise, it's pretty much a staple just to the deathmatch scene.
Yeah. Well, watching that, but like I said, it was all right. I think you should have had something a little more high paced for your first match coming back from the break, where you get people to invest in and buy into the situation. Where I just kind of like, it just felt like a wrestling match. It just felt like an extra match that they for some reason thought this, I guess, was strong there. I enjoyed it because we haven't had MLW in so long, but realistically, for what it should have been, it was average at best.
Yeah. And again, like, I definitely felt like first match back, you should have had something that was a bit more explosive. So even if you took out, I mean, again, I'm going to jump on Crazy Frank because I know the least about him, replaced him with someone who, was a bit more explosive, or maybe even a more traditional luchador in there, just so someone could pick up the pace again. Because like the entire match itself didn't feel like it got out of first gear.
I kind of feel like we're anti-Crazy Frank together.
And I blame it just because of, at least at my end, I will blame it on my general ignorance. Yeah, Damian is a luchador legend. Josef now is on our TV screen. Yeah, well, when we have MLW, he's on our TV screen like every week. So Crazy Frank's just going to be the weak link just because I know next to nothing about him. And I didn't bother to do my homework in the last 24 hours.
No, I'm not either. When they said Crazy Frank, I was like, is this somebody's homie that they just threw in there? Or like, hey, you crazy guy, come here, you're going to wrestle these two.
And in his defense, he did hold his own overall, like, considering the pace of the match. Like, and evidently, like, and again, they had Los Macizos in there to cover up for him some as well, who they didn't really mention who was in that stable. They're just like, here's some extra guys. Now it's 3-on-1. Great.
Now, the one thing I wanted to ask you about that, because you know more wrestling than I do, did those guys just randomly come out to beat them up, or they have a beef with either? Well, obviously we don't know Crazy Frank, but with the other guy, or we're just come out and thug these guys out?
From my understanding, what limited references they made on commentary is that the three of the Los Macizos and Crazy Frank are part of the group. And I'm not sure if Los Macizos is just a regular tag team or if that's the name of the stable in general. But Crazy Frank is at least affiliated with them, is what I got from commentary.
Works for me, because I was kind of clueless watching it, like, all right, cool. They just want to come out here and do some, thugging and bugging. I'm good with that.
Yeah. I mean, they brought a little bit of more octane to the fight than what was going on, but overall it wasn't enough to
It was
save
needed.
everything. Yeah. But okay, I think we dumped on Crazy Frank enough. We have a brief recap of the calling causing havoc throughout MLW. It was a lot of the footage we'd seen before. The real update we did get out of that was that the official announcement that from Dr. Schwegler makes his return, that Jacob Fatu is injured, at least won't be medically cleared for the next 3 weeks. So he is kind of like, in terms of like official standing, is like one of the first like full on real victims of the calling in terms of doing substantial damage outside of just the random beatdowns.
So
I mean, I don't want.
It might be that he's not in Mexico tapings, basically.
That was kind of my assumption, or even if he was, he's not. They're not going to have anything with him for the next handful of weeks. They're not planning on having his match until later on. But I guess my assumption is that they also referenced later on in the show that he still has he'll get another opportunity at the National Openweight Championship, and so that's when they'll kind of throw him back into the mix on that front. But otherwise, like, I don't care to spend too much time recapping it because it's basically the same video we've seen a handful of times anyway.
Yep.
From there, we get a brief interview with Hammer. And really what I took out of this, and they kind of glossed over it, is that he's having a title match with Danny Limelight, or Rivera from 5150. And like that's the part that like blew my mind, is they just kind of like glance over it and no one talks about it. Like, dude's a former MLW tag team champion. Like, you know, I actually like Danny Limelight. I was not a fan. I was a fan of his mic work because I feel like he relies just too much on cheap insults and profanity, which I feel, you know, good people on the mic can do better than that. But that's a whole nother topic. But like, again, like, put some respect on that name, man. He was a former title holder in your company. Like, maybe you should talk about him just a brief more. Like, yes, we need to bridge the gap to Alex Kane, and because that is going to be the big title. That is the big title fight that's coming up. And obviously, like, Hammer didn't lose to Danny Limelight in the process because they're still advertising, you know, Hammer versus Alex Kane, you know, July 8th. But I thought that was interesting. That just like randomly, like, you have an upcoming match with Danny Limelight.
Yeah, some random that's never been around. That's how they treat it. To me, it sounded like when I first heard it, and they kind of, like you said, glossed over. Like I was like, wait, Danny Limelight, like from 5150 LAX, like, but they just kind of, that guy. You got a match versus that guy. Yeah,
and just like other than that, it was kind of the standard Hammer promo where he puts over his opponent, but he also puts over that, you know, he's a fighting champ and this is going to be just another hurdle he will jump. So, yeah, I'm also not willing to spend too much time on that because it didn't blow me out of the water. Like, it was serviceable, but for the terms of like spending adequate time on a podcast, following that, we get a short and sweet promo from Delmi Exo, who is challenging Taya Valkyrie, or hoping to challenge Taya Valkyrie for the MLW Featherweight Championship. And I did like the parting line of that: Taya may be the Queen of Queens, but she has never dealt with the God Queen. So I thought that was fun. And I don't know about you, but I don't care enough to spend a lot of time on this because we've actually covered Taya versus Delmi in detail on this here very
way
show.
Too long.
Yeah, so I, you know, especially for a relatively short interview segment, like, you know, keep moving on that. Following that, we have a replay of an old One Called Manders promo. And I'll try to keep off my soapbox to trash Manders in terms of what, you know, Iowa may have cows and they may have boys, but that doesn't necessarily make you a cowboy. Evidently neither, according to Manders, having a cowboy hat and a belt buckle. But I won't go there, especially because he's probably going to kick my ass here this weekend. So,
oh, that's right. That show is the SCWs this weekend, right?
Yes, at least the time of this recording. Show I'm sponsoring for SCW Pro in Davenport, Iowa. Actually, the event is in Bluegrass, Iowa, but he's making his return home because SCW used to be his home promotion before he started making a name for himself and moved out east. So this is his first appearance home, in several months. Probably closer to 6. Yeah, maybe it was January. I don't know, but it's not, that part's not MLW, so I won't waste everyone's time on that. But he's coming back home. I'm going to be there because I spent money on promotion, and yeah, he's gonna be there. He's gonna hurt me. But if you haven't seen the promo, it's a nice introduction to what a Manders is. And for those of you who don't know what a Manders is, he is the boss of the Plains. He's also a member of the Second Gear crew. So like the promo itself was the promo video was well shot, I thought, but it was also a recap of what they did back when he first got into the promotion.
Now, talking about Second Gear crew and Manders, now I had to ask you because you put out a tweet and it was responded to. So I'm curious on if you could enlighten what you think might happen with this situation that you might have talked into existence.
Oh, I was just screwing around because I'm a jerk and I hate Manders. But I did respond. I did quote tweet. So if you go to @N.W.A, you can find it. And I basically implied that they should I didn't say anything about replacing Manders. I just note that Mance Warner, Matthew Thrash Justice, and Microman should become the new Second Gear crew, and that would be a license to print money, which it will be because there's no Manders and Microman's involved, and we all love Microman. So that wasn't a prediction or anything, though. It wouldn't surprise me if it goes kind of in that direction, because jumping up a little bit, they did like have a thing with where the Second Gear crew did interact with Mr. Saint Laurent, and he was kind of a jerk about things. So I kind of wonder if, he basically said he wasn't. They asked where Microman was because Manders specifically has a friendship with Microman, which I love that friendship too. I find it to be very entertaining. But he was like, I'm not Microman's babysitter, and like he wanders off after being a jerk, and then Microman, pops out of the bathroom, and they have a big little back and forth, and Manser gives Microman a beer because that's what they do.
You got him a tall beer.
Despite
they should have given one of those little beers.
Well, they did something like that with the Sandman, last year, where Sandman tried to give him I guess it was a regular sized beer, and while Sandman had a tall boy, and Microman was like, nah, grande cerveza, and so somehow he got a beer that was bigger than himself. But yeah, it was an interesting little bit, and I wonder if they'll go anything further with it, or if it was just another excuse to get Microman on television. But comparatively speaking, this is the first time we've seen MSL be kind of a jerk on screen. Usually he just spends all of his time either sucking up to Microman or being the ringmaster promoter extraordinaire, and this time he was kind of a jerk. So I wonder if they're planting some seeds of discontent there.
I mean, the way you said it, I'm going to agree with it, because, like you said, to me, he always comes off like a weasel, right? Like a kiss-ass weasel.
Oh, yeah.
His character was completely different, and kind of with all the hype and the micro car or bike, whatever it was, it's always been hype and Microman, and to be like, man, I don't know where he is, whatever. I was like, whoa, okay, so this is the GOAT. This was supposed to be, what was it?
This is your meal ticket, man.
Greatest free agent. Huh?
I said that was his meal ticket.
Yeah. He's supposed to be the greatest thing that ever was signed. You know what I mean? Yeah,
and so I didn't think about that at the time, and now that you kind of brought up the whole implying my original tweet was more me having weird insider knowledge rather than me just being a jerk. It is weird food for thought, or at least allow me to think about it a little bit more. So yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on that as well. Actually, I also want to jump back. Speaking of things that I might be psychic about, I missed it in my notes because they sandwiched the video in between the introduction of Crazy Frank and Damien. But we had an Azteca Underground group thing of returning to Mexico, at either a restaurant or a bar. So Taya Valkyrie, Johnny Mundo, Hennigan, and all sorts of insert name here that I can't remember off the top of my head, and Sam Adonis were hanging out. Great to be back in Mexico, and the waiter comes with the drinks, and they hook him up with the "Where's Cesar" sign with the 900 number. So they are still doing "Where's Cesar" in some stretch of the imagination after like not referencing that in quite some time. So that's still a thing, which tying that into our previous video, well, it's like 2 videos ago at this point, we talk about this in detail. And the thing that this one caught my eye because I was, we were just making stuff up, and then all of a sudden, here we go. Sam Adonis just like leaves the group. He's like, "Hey, see that hottie over there? I'm gonna go talk," and he just leaves. And I'm like, dude, you know who else is a hot woman? Salina de la Renta. I don't know why she's walking the streets of Mexico, but everything else, doesn't have to make sense in the wacky world of wrestling. But I just definitely thought that was an interesting caveat, considering like we had just had the conversation like 3 or 4 days ago of like Sam Adonis being a potential mole and jumping ship from Azteca to a promotion as Dorado.
That'd be. I didn't even think about it because I know you said it yesterday. You said it was funny when he saw the hot chick, and I'm like, yeah, it was mad funny, but I didn't even put 2 and 2 together. Like, I mean, not for nothing. That is a perfect kind of segue to that could be the start of what you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, do I really think that? No, but I just like considering the conversation we like just had, and all of a sudden he's like about him being the mole, and all of a sudden like, "Hey, hot chick," and just ditches everyone, like unceremoniously just ditches everyone. He's just like,
yeah, he did quick too. Like, I'm out.
Yeah, like I mean, at least he announced it. And he just didn't sneak away. But I just, that's just more just me possibly being like the broken clock being right twice a day, and thought that like weird little coincidence, just happenstance. Considering now our little tribe is tweeting Court Bauer directly, trying to be insiders now. Jumping back into things, we also have the press conference from Alex Kane, and really, in terms of non-in-ring action, and really kind of how things went, like even in-ring action, I felt like this was kind of the highlight of the night. Like Alex held himself very well, and it totally held himself as the main event talent that they are grooming him to be, and that this podcast thinks he can be as well.
Oh yeah, I watched, but it kind of goes back to and I'm not trying to cut you off. Like how we were talking about the press conference. This had that kind of feel what we were saying about it, where it would have been nicer to actually see somebody asking a question, but I like the attention to it, and I think he's a perfect person to do it that way. Like the camera, he's not afraid. Like, there's some people that struggle on a mic, and he is not one of them. As soon as that light is on, he's ready, and he has big main event feel to him. Like you said, he feels like the main event. To me, he feels like the champ. If you look at Hammerstone's promo versus this guy's, he seems like the more polished. I'm the guy. Like that. That's what it was to me.
Yeah, and compared to Hammer's, like Hammer to me came off, and this is me channeling Muffins, came off very much as like Georgia Championship Wrestling or CWF, like early 80s. The babyface champions were always just very soft spoken overall. They were very much just, yes, it is great to be here. Like I do happen to consider myself to be the best wrestler in the world, and this belt proves it. However, I am looking to prove myself against all comers, and and doesn't go into the histrionics that we associate with professional wrestling nowadays.
Exactly.
And which is also weird for Hammer, which I thought was interesting, because yes, he does come off as subdued sometimes, but he also does ramp it up with his faux Hogan shtick. Didn't mean to, throw in the curse word. I was going for shtick there. There goes our monetization.
It's all good.
Yeah, I've already cursed on this podcast, so whatever, man. Just not this particular episode. But compared to Kane, who seamlessly, handled every question handled to him, and granted, like, yes, this was a pre-tape, like it wasn't a real press conference or whatever, but still, he just had that aura about him, even just handling in that situation, and carried himself like he was already the champion. So I think regardless of the outcome in July, like I think he's definitely someone that if they're not looking to invest in him, they need to start. But obviously, I think they are investing in him because he did win Battle Riot. So that's a stupid thing for me to say that they're not investing in him.
I got the bourbon ready to talk a whole lot of shit to Muffins because he tried to tell him, slow down. You got to earn his stripes. So as soon as he wins, because I'm calling it, he's winning. I'm going to sit here talk it's going to be pretty much me ranting on Muffins the whole show. He's going to open his mouth and I'm just going to keep like, yeah, but Alex Kane. It's going to be I'm just going to say Alex Kane the whole podcast.
Well, and how slow do you want to take him? He's been here over a year.
Yeah, easily.
It's not like a lot of the folks that they just show up and they give a title shot to. Like, they've actually bothered to give him like a major storyline in the Opera Cup disappearance, and even like once they determined it was him that took it, like they still ran with it for a bit. It wasn't like no. I have it next, and then next week he loses it or whatever. Like he held on long enough to call it the Oprah Cup and do his thing with it. He's a former national openweight champion in his own right. Like he's done stuff. Like if they would go much slower with him, like I feel like they would go into Ring of Honor territory where they push a guy, he gets hot, and then they wait for him to stop being quite so, like they wait for him to be bright orange rather than white hot, and then put the title on him. And I feel like, if they wait too much longer with Kane, especially like, again, we pointed out how the crowds are with him despite him being a heel. And so even if you don't turn him true face, like you still got to strap him up, put that rocket on now. And I feel like this press conference here was just a further example of why they need to do that. But
I'm good. Yeah, next.
Yeah, I guess so. And we've also covered that in detail too. So check cheap plugs for the rest of the videos on this here channel. So totally check out our old videos. With that, I believe it is time for our main event, Fatal 4-Way action for the AAA Reyna Championship, in addition to the MLW Featherweight Championship, as Taya Valkyrie defends against Sexy Star II, La Hiedra, and Dallas. And I will say, like, I at least have a modicum of familiarity with both Sexy Star Part 2 and La Hiedra. I'm not familiar with Dallas, even though they said she'd had some time under her belt, and then being second generation and married into the Casas family as well. But I don't know if I've just glossed over her or she just totally remade herself. And again, like, I'm not the be all end all on AAA as well, especially if when you lose your, sometimes I'm not great if they lose your mask, so you drastically change your gimmick. Like I might have missed that as well, but I'm at least familiar with the other folk. But a lot of moving parts in here, and so as like a proper review, I do feel like it's hard to sometimes keep things up. But personally, I also felt like this was a technical version of the same complaints I had with the first match of the evening. In this case, everyone did their stuff rather well, but I don't feel like really anybody got out of like first gear. Like, it just seemed like everyone was taking turns getting their stuff in, and then the next person took over for a bit.
Yeah, no. Now I know one of the things they said about the Dallas girl was that her and her husband were at like a competitor, and then people were surprised when they jumped to AAA.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, cool. Like, I didn't really know her work, but I don't watch a lot of Mexican wrestling. It's just not my thing. But out of all the girls, now I like Lahidra because we've seen her prior in MLW. We've seen some of her work. She had, I think she was in a 4-way as well, right? She did with Taya, I think, right?
Yeah. Oh, if not with Taya, like there was a Luchadora showcase as well, because like they did it like they're going to do it like some variation of it like twice. Like they had a whole Luchadora kind of mini storyline involving them trying to dethrone Taya.
Yeah, because it was the Georgia tapings.
Yeah, and then I don't know what happened, and they were a victim of the calling card. Well, at the time, the calling card killers, and now it's just the calling. But they were a victim of the calling, and so they didn't have that scheduled match. But I know Sexy Star was also angling, and I can't remember if she did get that one-on-one match with Taya herself. But yeah, so like we've seen most of them before within MLW within the last calendar year or so.
This was Sexy Star Part 2, because the other one had the issue with Rosemary, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. She is Sexy Star, the original, who everyone would know from probably in America, probably best known for breaking Rosemary's arm and or Lucha Underground. But they passed on the gimmick, as AAA is wont to do, to a new worker. And so this they would occasionally refer to her as Sexy Star 2. But overall, like a lot of times, like, and even when we do try to shorten up our speech patterns, they just called her Sexy Star.
Okay.
So this is not the original Sexy Star, for clarification.
Now, do you feel this one is better or not as good as the first one?
I can't. I will quasi abstain because I have not seen enough of her work as compared to the original. But she definitely can hold her own. I'll put it like that. She is definitely she is definitely a very good professional wrestler. And I do think, despite what certain people say, Sexy Star did have some star qualities to her. To kind of like, she did have a little bit of that it factor. And I haven't seen enough of Sexy Star the second to like full on say that she has it. But she definitely is going to hold her. She definitely can hold her own in the ring, if nothing else.
That works for me. And my whole take on this match, like, and I'm once again, I wish I didn't have to agree with you, because I'm agreeing with you a lot. And I know it kind of makes for like shitty podcasts, like these guys always agree. Yeah. But this show really felt kind of just drawn out. Like, it didn't reel you in. It didn't make you sit back and go, oh man, like I can't get up. Like, I gotta watch this. But the Dalise girl, I didn't know her work. So out of all the girls, even with Taya winning, I was like, okay, I was kind of more drawn to her, not because I didn't know her work, but because I felt that she had the best showing of the 4. So I was kind of like, okay, I kind of like this girl. Hopefully this ain't the last time we see her. But I mean, I know they said that didn't they tease a super series in MLW with AAA?
Well, this is supposed to be the start of it. And
yeah.
But they
didn't like it's more than just this one with the girls.
Right. Yeah. And like, see, you were really impressed with Dalise, and actually she was the part that like angered me the most in this match.
Really?
Yeah, because when it came to the finish, when Taya was did the Road to Valhalla, like you could see blatantly in the background Dalise acting like Psyduck. Like she's just in the background going, oh! And like she just hit her finish, do something. And she just, oh, the refs counted to 3. Do something. Oh, at least
I've never heard Psyduck.
At least Dalise, or at least La Hiedra, wasn't on camera failing to do anything. Like Dalise was blatantly on her feet. Like, do something. There's only one fall to this match. Just. Don't just stand there with your eyes glazed over. And the camera was like right on her too. Like, go play dead somewhere so I can't see you. You're on your feet. At least make an effort to get into the ring and stop the fall.
The Psyduck reference is gonna get me forever. You know what I mean? Like, Alex, you remember Psyduck? So, did you watch MLW? Did you see the girl who kind of? He just called a Psyduck.
I mean, she didn't full on hands on head wobble, but she was selling her head like outside the ring and just stood there while everything was going on, and I just couldn't. I just couldn't.
It's like
and
either get out of the camera's view or roll in and do a slow roll and act like you're gonna try to do something. Like,
yeah, be
it
there,
was
get
rough.
in there and be a step too late. You know,
Exactly.
it's that, like, that's one of the things I reference on Confusion is that, like, I know how wrestling is supposed to work, blah blah blah. But it's like watching a movie. Like, you let yourself go, man. And sometimes just certain things catch you, and you're in reality. And like, no, that is like so bad. Like, why? Like, in what world does this make sense? And like,
But
that was one of them where I'm like, yeah, wrestling. Don't go into the basement. Like, that's
now, the thing is, you said, and they did say she was like a super veteran, right? So you
yeah.
would think that she would understand placement. Now, and this is something that I say with a lot of wrestlers where people, I did catch some heat because I said, I don't remember what wrestler I said, but I said, wow, they actually look lost, like they don't have no ring awareness and they don't know where to be. Now, when you're on a level of, just say MLW, Impact, N.W.A, all these shows, if you're on this level and you've been on there for a long enough time, you should understand where you need to be or where to be out of the way, right? Like, this is your field. This is what you do for a living. So know where you have to be. That was and I agree, that's my one knock with her, was being on camera kind of looking like a deer in headlights. I agree to that. But
and I mean, and I'm being hard on her, because wrestling for TV and wrestling for a crowd are two entirely different things.
oh yeah.
And so, like, I don't know how much how much time is spent in AAA doing a television product as compared to the live shows. I mean, I know the bread and butter down in Mexico is the live
Yeah.
shows, and TV is just like a happy little broadcasting tool to bring more eyes to the product to go to the live shows. And so, like, it's not outside of the there's a distinct possibility that she just is only used to working for the crowd, and you don't have to worry about a camera like that's over there possibly directly on you while you're in the background, because in theory, like, you're just kind of off doing your own thing, and the people right in your area can see what you're doing and
Exactly.
only paying that much attention. It's like, it could be like the old monster movies where there's kind of like, sometimes you see like the guy kind of like walk in the back and like, oops, like, because you couldn't fix it, you just went along with it, and you weren't, you're only used to doing X, Y, and Z. But like, that took me out of the match, and we spent way too much time on that one little gaff, compared to what, like, I feel is like the real issue with the match. And it was like the match number one where it just didn't get out of first gear. It was significantly better than the hardcore match, but it definitely didn't seem like a coherent match. It just seemed more of a slower paced exhibition. Like, you never really felt there was any danger of a pinfall at any given moment, or that, like, outside of that one cool spot where we had like dual pins, like that there was a whole lot else kind of going on about it.
Yeah, it was definitely like I said, the show was decent, but it wasn't what you wanted for your coming off the break. You know what I mean? Like, you expected something
Exactly.
hotter.
Yeah. And I mean, in general, like, I definitely call this kind of a miss, because this is, again, your season premiere. You really kind of need to, kick it up, give us something to remember and to wow us, and then you can kind of pull things back a little bit to kind of like get us over to the next hump, or tide us over to the next big storyline point. And these were two overall heatless matches, because they referenced the Super Series and then did nothing outside of like, it's the Super Series. Like, they didn't give any stakes to the matches as to why we should care extra for it. And then the matches themselves were passable at best.
Exactly.
Nothing necessarily inherently wrong with them outside of us over critiquing them, but there was nothing to knock our socks off there, and there really was nothing to take us to the next step, with a lot of the storylines as well, like outside of just the press conference and Hammer's little promo kind of was getting us there, but the calling wasn't really involved. We'll see where the Microman and Mr. Saint Laurent goes, if there's going to be anything more with that. We'll see if they bring up some more stuff involving Cesar Duran, since they're in Mexico. But yeah, I agree, and like I said, it makes it overall for some boring podcasts overall when everyone agrees and we're just magical and everyone's getting along. And I was almost, given our conversation last night, I was almost like, oh, we might actually have a good on spar thing about it, because you were very pro show and I was I was a bit more on the negative side about it.
Is when you started breaking it down, I'm like, oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, damn.
No, he sounds like he knows what he's talking about. My greatest flaw is sometimes I sound like I know what I'm talking about, and then people just go along with it, and that's why I can never eat at one of the Dairy Queens in Galesburg, Illinois.
Whoa, hold on.
Even though that event happened 10 years ago. No, I
Dairy Queen.
No. I just won't eat there now, because I accidentally talked one of their staff into spraying their manager with their whatever cleaning solution they use, and the manager was delivering a tray of French fries to people. She totally just had the spray bottle and went and to her manager, who had a tray of food right at the table. And I'm like, if they're hiring these folk, I just can't eat here anymore. What? If they're willing,
the person to do it.
Yeah, I didn't even have to talk. I didn't fully talk her into it either. Her and her manager evidently were close. The manager basically told her to get to work, and then so she turned to me and was like, "Did you see how she talked to me?" And I'm like, "You got a spray bottle. You should spray her." Literally, that is all I said. I didn't, it's not like the show where I laid out bullet points as to why I happen to be right. I literally just went you have a spray bottle, you should spray her. And she walked off and did it. And everyone involved that wasn't her just was like, what was that?
You're like, that guy, he said something.
Well, and then and then just they're like, why would you do that? And he's like, well, he said I should, and he looked like he knew what he was talking about. And we're all like, why would you listen to this guy? Nobody knows.
Wow.
No one knows who I am. I'm not a celebrity. I have even less clout than I do now, because at least now I'm 10 years older and have a podcast, to have 2 podcasts going on. At least I can pretend to be a media celebrity now. I didn't have that at the age of 30.
Jeez. All right.
I was.
So, I don't even know what that. That was probably the best part of the podcast.
Probably was. All my real stories are better than me talking about wrestling, because my life has had so much WTF matey. And instead, I try to get out of this insanity by going into the insane world of professional wrestling. And even then, I'll throw out there that despite me just trying to be boring and sounding like I know what to talk about while I'm running down why Dali shouldn't be in front of the camera when there's a pinfall going on. I counterbalance that with picking fights with cowboys. So, things aren't going to get better. As Manders once told me, things are going to get better, just not for you. You being me. So.
Whoa. You know what? I love the budding rivalry. Have you ever thought about trying to mess with them at show?
Oh, by the time well, the funny thing is I've not taken it to a significant level until he got on MLW TV.
So
that's the genesis of it. I would boo him at shows. I would yell snarky things from the crowd. Occasionally, I would reference something on Twitter with SCW Pro. But then he started appearing on all these shows that I happened to watch, on YouTube, on IWTV, And now like he's on the podcast, so like I can't even be a jerk and be like, well, I don't like, not that he has actual change the channel heat with me, but I can't even now like be like, nope, because now he's invading my pretend job. That's what's going on. So I've ramped it up now just because I have to see him every week. And then of course
So,
I'm snarky on things he's tagged in, so he actually sees it. I think we lost you for a moment.
Yeah, you guys are you're playing with fire.
Yeah. As I said, and he's coming home
Rob,
this weekend.
I think we
so
touched everything. Oh, I want stories.
And much more.
I want stories. I want something to talk about next week about this situation. We did all the plugs.
I mean, don't get. I say, don't worry. Like whenever I go to SCW, for those of you who follow me on social media, there's always like a photo dump of what was going on. So like you'll always see that, and if anything cool happens, the wife is probably going to record it anyway. Though I'm jokingly saying, like, be warned, folks. I'm also bringing a meat shield with me. I'm bringing my nephew, who's at least my size, so maybe he'll take a beating for me. Because I'm a real man and I will hide behind my nephew. I've done it before when he was much smaller. I am not afraid to do it now that he's actually man-sized. So you want a story? There's a story. I hid behind, at the time he was like 8. I hid behind my 8-year-old nephew because the pre-Warhorse Warhorse was threatening me during a match because I wouldn't shut my mouth.
Jeez. All right. I need content, and I think you're gonna have content soon. We did all the plugs. We talked everything MLW. We talked about hiding behind little niños.
This is what happens when Muffin leaves. We have to fill up space reference.
We got a Psyduck reference. So we got some Pokemon in there for all you Pokemon Go people. Go get your Psyducks ready. Like I said, we did everything. So I think we're done.
Good enough.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, for myself, the most professional guy on our podcast, Mr. MLW Confusion. Muffins, you get no love because you want to sit there and act like nobody tagged you and everybody tagged you twice. No love for you. Now you got to edit this and put it out there. Old man. Deuces.